while, but welcome back to another episode of Inspired Content. I'll be taking a read-through of a quick book. Still trying to get over some health issues, so it's going to be light reading for right now, but it's Lucky Starr and the Oceans of Venus. That's written by Isaac Asimov, writing as Paul French. I'll give that a quick look through and see you on the other side. Alright, welcome back. We're taking a look at Lucky Starr and the Oceans of Venus. This is sort of a fun little adventure into retro science fiction for me. I'd never read any of these before. I can kind of see how this is really meant more as a young adult science fiction, maybe even tween science fiction. But it was kind of fun. It was refreshing and different from a little more the ones that take themselves too seriously and are a little more grim and dark. This was very kind of adventures without being grim and dark, and that was kind of nice for a change. I really like the style of story being more about the solving the puzzle than necessarily having to be directly about the science fiction. But at the same time, the science fiction, you can't tell this story without it, so it's well put together. I think it still reads a little younger than an adult fiction, but alright, so let's move into the ideas, because I don't want to really spoil the story too much for you, but I'd love to see more retro science fiction, where, I mean, admittedly he says in the intro that this was written back when this didn't seem as fantastic, maybe? He tried to make it as realistic as possible, but it has that very kind of Flash Gordon serial feel to it. Even to the point of some of the story elements seem to have that cliffhanger moment where like they cut to commercial break after a loud gunshot and you don't know who's shot and what happened, and then you come right back and it explains it. It does have some of that feel to it, but I like the idea of doing a little more of that retro science fiction stories, and we could use more of that now. I think we could use a little more of the optimistic adventure stories. There's an element in this story, and I'll try not to spoiler it, but there's a mind control element in here. They talk about hypnosis, or whether or not it's a will dominance. But I think you could take those elements and just as easily put them into a robot, a functional humanoid android or something like that being hacked. Maybe even a cyborg, somebody hacking a cyborg, rather than a mind control so much as just being able to slip in a program into an artificial brain or an implant and make somebody do things. There's a lot of discussion of the ocean life in this story, and I actually found that really kind of fascinating. But some of the things I thought would be kind of interesting is to take some of those. One of the ideas they have is how big can a sea creature get? Because they're not on land, they don't have the buoyancy allows them to get bigger than they could otherwise get. And you move into the microgravity environment of space, and I bet you could get even bigger. And so I kind of like the idea of almost like a coral reef of complex life forms. I mean, there are science fiction stories where like a herd of living spaceships or something moves through space, and that's grand and all, but it would be kind of neat to see like a coral reef instead of an asteroid belt. So just this big reef of different life forms, and they could get truly massive out there in microgravity. I would love to see a book a little bit more along the lines of the scenes in this story where Lucky is looking out the portholes on a ship he's on into the oceans of Venus and seeing the wildlife and its predators and prey and the cycles of how they interact with each other and the different kind of describing how they adapt. And it's a little nerdy moment in there, but I think you could make a real story of exploring a strange new world and give us the experience of being there. It doesn't have to be a story necessarily, but I do think there's space for something like that. The grand scheme of this whole story was really run somewhat transparently as a Sherlock Holmes in space. And you've got your Lucky Starr as the young Sherlock, and you've got your big man as the Watson. And it's somewhat transparent that was the goal here, but it's not a killer necessarily for the story. I think it would be fun to try to do a better shot at a Sherlock Holmes in space. Not deliberately Sherlock Holmes, but that style of the smart man in space with the assistant sidekick and solving crimes and riddles. There are ways to do that that I think could be explored again. I'm sure it's been done a few times, and I know of at least one or two other cases of that having been done. This last one is a little bit of a spoiler, but there's a section in the story where the characters eat a meal in the green room, as they call it, and they think they have like a beef stroganoff with a side of this kind of soup and a fruit salad, and it's revealed to them later on that everything they ate was cultured yeast, and there are different strains that have been engineered to do different things and get different taste and texture aspects into it. And that's an interesting story element. The place I thought they were going with it isn't where they went with it, but I very seriously got to thinking that part of the story was leading to the fact that the people who had been apparently gone into a trance and did things that they didn't know they were doing, I thought it was entirely possible that they had accidentally engineered a strain of yeast that could take over a person's mind like a parasite or a symbiont and dominate somebody and do things with their body that they're unaware of. I thought that's where they were going, and he didn't go there with that. That segment of the story just kind of dropped and disappeared. So it's fair game. We can write that story ourselves. So yeah, that would be a story I'd be interested in maybe writing. And you're welcome to do it too. Alrighty, so those are the ideas I got out of this, and I'll see you for the next episode. Take care.